in collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
With the international conference on Cyprus just a few weeks away, leading citizens are calling on the President to approach the meeting realistically and honestly.
I think we should approach the issue realistically. First of all, we should acknowledge that both communities fear, they are concerned, so we need to look for practical ways and means of giving them the comfort which justifiably expect that they will be able to live in peace and security.
And we talked to an expert about how we should be looking at changing our education system.
The potential of every child is enormous, and what we need to be able to do is inspire the development of curricula, of not memorisation, but focusing on inspiring learners to achieve the best that they can.
A petition has been launched online ahead of the meeting that will hopefully eventually solve the Cyprus problem. And it's a campaign asking people to sign for the reunification of our island. One of the people behind it is Cyprus Mail columnist Christos Panayotidis. Christos, this is something that's got quite a lot of big names behind it. What makes you think that it's going to work?
Well, I don't know whether it's going to work, but what we're trying to do is to encourage our president to approach the forthcoming meeting in Geneva with a positive attitude. The time has come to seek and secure a solution to the Cyprus problem, because we believe that the status quo is not maintainable. This is what we're trying to do, get this message across, but not only to our compatriots here, but to the international community as well, because we want to tell them that we are very keen to see Cyprus reunited, to see all the Cypriots, Greek Cypriots, Turkish Cypriots, living together as we used to. It's not easy, but we believe that it's doable.
Right, and it's interesting that you say as they used to, because with every year that passes, there are fewer and fewer Cypriots who remember how it used to be.
Well, if you are trying to disclose my age, you have achieved that goal.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying that it's much easier for the older people to look back and remember their neighbours and the way that they did get on, all right, with a few exceptions perhaps. But the younger generation have really not known that closeness and that community feeling. And so it's quite difficult these days, isn't it, to get that message across?
Well, first of all, let me confirm that I belong to that generation. And I really care, and I really would like to see those times coming back. Now, you are right. The younger people have never experienced this togetherness. And it was inevitable, because for half a century, effectively, the two communities have been kept apart. They have not been allowed to mix. And we believe that the time has come to break these barriers, because I have had the chance to speak to a lot of Turkish Cypriots, and I believe that they are as keen as the vast majority of the Greek Cypriots to see an end to this unacceptable situation we have been forced to put up with over the past 50 years.
Right, now we do know that Tayyip Erdogan is apparently becoming more and more hardline, certainly within Turkey. We've always said that we're dealing here with Turkey rather than with the Turkish Cypriots, and the election of Ersin Tatar would suggest that perhaps that's true, because he does seem to be Erdogan's yes man, correct me if I'm wrong. But how can we overcome that, if you like, because the Turkish Cypriots are actually even more at risk here, surely, than the Greek Cypriots?
Our approach is very, very simple. What we're saying is that we should go to Geneva as Greek Cypriots. And this is why this petition is addressed to the leader of the Greek Cypriot community, because we are sort of requesting, instructing our leader to act in a certain manner. We should go to Geneva with a positive attitude. We should be fair, we should be correct, we should stick to what we have committed ourselves to do in finding a solution to the Cyprus problem. We should show good faith, and once we do this, we are convinced that we will have the full support of the international community, be it the United Nations, the Secretary General, the European Commission, and a lot of other friends we have around the world. This is already happening. As you know, the top brass of the European Union, they were in Turkey yesterday, and they've been trying to convince the president of that country that he should take a more reconciliatory approach in addressing this problem. This pressure is significant, and it's being applied on our behalf because it also serves the interests of the European Union, of course. But that is the attitude, that is the spirit with which we should approach the problem. We cannot change Erdogan, but I'm not sure if Ecevit was in his place, it would have been much different.
Yeah, well, we can't really speculate about that, but I'm interested that you decided to run this campaign and this petition partly because of the University of Cyprus's poll that suggested 80% of their respondents supported reunification. But let me ask you this, Christos. What sort of reunification are they supporting? Because it seems that a lot of people have different ideas, and I do recall very clearly years ago talking to former President Vasiliou, who said we have to be pragmatic and we can't have the reunification we want. We have to have the reunification that we are able to get. There's a huge difference there. Do you think that Greek Cypriots understand that?
I think they do. I really believe that they do. And you see, one has to be careful when it comes to interpreting these Gallup findings, because if you ask a Greek Cypriot in abstract terms what would be the ideal solution to the Cyprus problem, naturally and inevitably he would say, I would like to see a unified state in which the 80% majority should be in control with adequate protection of the minority. However, in real terms, today that is not feasible, and everybody knows that the United Nations, the international community, are supporting a specific type of reunification. And that is the one we should go for.
Well, that's the one we've already partially agreed to. Now let me come to the attitude of our president, because Nikos Anastasiades seems to flip-flop from one thing to another. Has he still got the trust of negotiators on the other side?
Well, I'm not in a position to say how the other side feels about our president. But what we are saying in the petition is that we should be honest, straightforward, proper, indeed in order to show the other side and the world that we mean business.
Christos, my point was that can we still do that, bearing in mind the way that we seem to have changed our positions to suit either domestic consumption, EU consumption, Turkish consumption, or whatever, because we keep saying one thing, doing another, and then changing our mind and doing something different. And so it must be very difficult for them to think, OK, this time they really are being honest.
You are making a valid point. However, today we have the support of the European Union. That is a form of guarantee for the other side that we are going to stick to our word. We have the support of the United Nations. I believe we have the support of the United States. Now, these are serious players in the international game, and therefore, if they throw their weight behind this process, and I have the feeling that they are doing exactly that, then I think we have a chance. It's not going to be easy, but I think we need to do our best, because we have no other option. The other option is to divide our homeland into two pieces, and that will be the beginning of the end for the Greek Cypriots on this island in the Eastern Mediterranean.
Well, the other thing that I'm always surprised at is that there's very little information from the ruling authorities, whoever they may have been over the last years, about, for example, bearing in mind the state of the economy at the moment, the economic benefits for all of Cyprus if it becomes properly reunited and business opens up and investment comes in. It's something that affects everybody, and it doesn't seem that really there's any great care being taken to explain how these benefits could accrue in the event of an agreement.
I think you are making a very valid point. But in reality, we have an establishment, and they wish to maintain their comparative advantage under the present conditions and circumstances. That is, to a certain extent, understandable. But I couldn't agree with you anymore. If we manage to reunite Cyprus, the sky will be the limit, literally, in terms of prosperity, in terms of peace of mind, because it's not only the monetary benefits which will accrue. We will at last feel safe. I'm 75 years old, going back to the starting point of our discussion. At no point in my life did I feel really safe being on this island. And I feel that that's unfair. We deserve that feeling of being safe, not only for our sake, but for the sake of our children and our grandchildren. And I think we should go for that. It's worth trying.
Which brings us finally to the issue of security and guarantees, and again, a lack of willingness to take the long view, because we did have an offer in the past of a staged withdrawal of Turkish troops from the island, and we rejected it. So they're still here, and of course both sides have their own security concerns. Do you think we can overcome this problem of whether or not a certain number of troops stay for a short period, perhaps, just to make sure nothing goes wrong? Or are we going to stick to the everybody out and we'll get on with it?
Well, if you read my articles in Cyprus Mail every Sunday, I'm sure you know that I believe that we made a mistake 3.5 years ago, because banking our hand on the table in saying, claiming zero troops, zero guarantees was a tactical mistake. I think we should approach the issue realistically. First of all, we should acknowledge that both communities fear, they are concerned. So we need to look for practical ways and means of giving them the comfort which justifiably expect that they will be able to live in peace and security. And I think if we look around, I'm sure we will find ways and means of providing these assurances. Now, insisting that all the troops should leave overnight is, in my opinion, unrealistic and unnecessary for that matter. I think it's a tactical mistake if we focus on such an issue. Obviously, we should have ways of ensuring that whatever is agreed upon will be followed and will be applied. But if the troops leave in 2-3 years gradually, it doesn't really matter. And we should not lose the opportunity of reuniting Cyprus by focusing on absolute demands. It would be a mistake.
So, Christos, if people want to put their name to this petition, where should they go?
The address is 1 with a number 1 Cyprus.eu.
Christos Panayotidis, columnist for the Cyprus Mail and one of the people behind that petition. You can sign it online, and it's being backed by people like former President George Vassiliou, former Foreign Minister Ioannis Kassoulidis, and many others who have spent so many long years praying, hoping and waiting for a solution to the Cyprus problem.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Those of you who've listened regularly to the programme will know that on many occasions we've touched upon the issue of education in Cyprus. So it's a great pleasure to welcome this week Tassos Anastasiades, who is an international education leader, and he's got ideas about how we could improve education for our children here in Cyprus. So Tassos, first would you start by telling us some of the work you've done in many other countries, and I'm interested to know whether or not one size fits all when it comes to plans for improving education systems.
Yes, thank you for inviting me to this programme. I'm honoured to be able to give you my experience and details of my educational vision. I was actually brought up in the United Kingdom, and that's where I studied for my doctorate. And I suppose I was a part of the old education system, a very much test-based education system where you had to study for exams. Unless you got A's, B's and C's, you didn't get to the best universities, etc. And since then I've travelled, I've worked in many different countries, Cyprus including. I spent a few years in Paphos, I've worked in Nicosia, I've worked in Larnaca, and I've also worked in Limassol. And one thing that inspired me is that wherever I work, whether it's Malaysia, Africa, the Middle East, a long time in the Middle East, wherever I've worked, yes, it is very much a one-size-fits-all. It's just the education system that perhaps needs to adjust to learning. Because education is about educating our children to become independently thinking. They need to be able to think for themselves. They need to be able to stand for themselves. They need to have the skills for 21st century. They need to be globally aware. They need to be ecologically conscious. A lot of innovation is happening now. I mean, our children, as we all know, are more innovative than many of us. Communication is critical. And they need to be happy in their learning. So yes, very much a one-size-fits-all. And I'm convinced we now have the mechanisms and the leadership that can make very rapid educational change.
Because I do think that if you're familiar with the Cypriot system, you will know that it's very much still rote learning, repeat what the teacher has said, write it down when it's exam time, and you're done. And I have always thought that a good education teaches you two things. One is how to think, and the other is where you can find answers for yourself.
Absolutely. What learning should be recognised by is the success of your students in setting and achieving their own personal goals to fulfil their purpose. It's not about just jumping over hoops. Not everyone can jump over the same hoops, and not everyone thinks in the same way. We have incredibly creative students. We have spatial thinkers. We have children that think in mathematical terms. I mean, the potential of every child is enormous, and what we need to be able to do is inspire the development of curricula, not memorization, but focusing on inspiring learners to achieve the best that they can with the gifts that they have. Because every child, I'm sure you would agree, has got their gifts. And every child can grow, and every child is special.
So what would you propose? I think you've been in touch with educators on the island, and I have spoken over the last 20 years or more to pretty well every single Minister of Education making the suggestions I just made to you. They all agree with me, but I don't see the curriculum changing at all.
Well, look, I mean, yes, I'm in touch with quite a few people at the moment, and with school leaders, and what we're trying to do at the moment is develop a vision for innovation for Cyprus. And passionately, I believe that once we agree the way forward, we can all have an agreement on this vision that we need to inspire development of curricula, that we need to be recognised by the success of our students. We need to be nourishing individual development and innovative mindsets. We need to be aspiring to the highest internationally recognised performance standards, but individual. We need to acknowledge that there are challenges in education because of technological development. It's very different. Our children are born with iPads and mobile phones in their hands, so finding out knowledge is not like it used to be, where we have to go through an encyclopedia and memorise it. We need to respect a culture based on internationalism, also based on of course, on national identity. But the curriculum needs to be challenging personally, so they develop socially, emotionally, they develop their self-esteem, and they embrace this culture of they believe in themselves. They're all gifted and they're unique learners within the Cyprus culture, and Cyprus is really the bedrock of education. Democracy and equality, equity. We've got all the values here that can make a world-leading education.
So what, in practical terms, would you suggest? If you were Minister of Education, what's the first thing you would do? And indeed, considering the strength of the teaching unions here in Cyprus, how on earth would you get it across? Because a lot of the teachers are very much stuck in the old system, which suits them just fine, thank you.
Well, look, I mean, once teachers actually recognise the power of the learner, and the fact that they don't have to spend every night planning lessons and marking the scripts like robots, and it's not really a mechanical thing. And what they're doing is actually sharing their learning objectives and allowing the children to blossom, becoming inspirers of learning, asking critical questions and allowing the children to enjoy their learning. They will begin to realise actually that the teaching profession can be enjoyable and it can be fun. So really, it's about a paradigm shift. It's about actually recognising the teachers. I'm not saying this in a negative way. Let's drop teaching and focus on learning. Let's let the children learn, and we inspire their learning. Let's not pretend we are the doctors of philosophy and science and biochemistry and history and we know everything, because actually we don't. A lot of it is outdated. Let's just focus on allowing the children to grow and to germinate and to blossom and to provide real evidence of learning. So the first step we'll do would be to have a group of, let's say, movers, inspirers that can actually help us change the paradigm shift and allow the ministry and the head of school and everyone that's is responsible for the education of children to start to let go and let the children loose to begin to show evidence of learning, and much less focus on tests and exam results. Of course, there's going to be the fear, how do we assess children? But that's the next stage. Assessment, exams and things like that comes once the paradigm shift has taken place.
Of course, the biggest problem with all of this, as with so many things, is that we're already in a system. And if you look at, for example, the UK changes to education over the years, some school years they haven't known whether they're taking GCSEs or they're taking A-levels or they're not doing this, and with the pandemic they weren't doing any exams. And so it's very difficult, is it not, to change things when half of the school has got to carry on to the finish as it is, otherwise it's not fair on the kids.
Well, look, we're not talking about a global change immediately, because I'm actually teaching myself. I'm teaching at the moment biology A-level to Cambridge, but I'm teaching in a different manner. There are texts, there are books, there's a lot of literature, of course, there are past papers. But my teaching and learning is very much based on, to call it the Finnish model, the creative model, the International Baccalaureate model, where I'm inspiring students and through learning objectives to produce their own evidence of learning against the objectives set by the exam system. So I'm finding incredible creativity in the way they're presenting their learning to me. All at the same aim, and when it of course gets to the exam time, we do have to still prepare them for the examination. But the learning in the classroom far exceeds learning on the curriculum, the syllabus. We were talking about COVID the other day, and the understanding of the world and the global community still talking about killing a virus. My biology students were still saying, well, why are people talking about killing a virus when surely they know it's not alive? And then we spoke about pneumonia, and they then went on to talk about the causes of pneumonia and why people are dying. And one student says, I think I know why people are dying. The cells are actually committing suicide, and therefore they can't repair in the lungs. Now, that level of critical thinking was enormous. And, of course, he was actually right, but he worked it out. No knowledge of medicine at all. He just worked it out. Fascinating learning going on, innovative learning. Exams will disappear eventually because, it's a perfect storm now. The boards are asking teachers to reassess on evidence base for GCSEs and A-levels. And there's a lot of scepticism at the value of a 3-hour examination to test 2 years learning.
So finally, what is your message? We have to make changes, but I presume they can't all be made at once. And again, particularly with the fact that teacher training colleges don't all accept your version of things. Now, a lot of them do, and there is a move towards your style of teaching. But if the teachers are not taught to implement this, then it's not going to happen.
Well, look, the message is let's collaborate with me, work with this vision. As you know, I've been sending it out to key stakeholders, and I've been receiving responses from all different towns and even from industry. And one thing that they're doing is they're adding what they think works in Cyprus. So as I'm improving this vision, it's based on ownership. But there is one thing that is the barrier. And I've experienced it through a couple of interviews, even one today with a top law firm who was working with the government and said to me, look, it's fantastic, we want this to happen. Everyone's still writing an exercise book that says anything's we don't forget. We don't want that for Cyprus. We know we want better, but we don't believe it will happen. So we really have to get some key leaders in every town saying, actually, we do believe it will happen. And we can move, and we will move, and then get the people's support, because the people will come on board very quickly. And the new generation, my daughter's working in Pafos, she's the generation that wants to move in this style, and I taught in Limassol. Many of my students are now leaders in Cyprus, solicitors or doctors or lawyers. They want the movement. Once we provide them the opportunity, we don't do the work, they will do it for us. They will drive us to innovation. They will drive Cyprus to becoming a leader in education as it should be.
As long as there's the political will, as they say.
Political will will come with us, the people, the community, speaking loudly about our vision. So let's get our vision clear, and let's all collaboratively fight for him.
That is President Anastasiades, international educator, talking to us about the required changes to our education system in Cyprus. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.